Take a deep breath and then let it out. Now relax, because we're going to do some hydrangea pruning, and it's no big deal. How many hydrangea pruning videos have you seen? I've made a bunch of them myself. How many hydrangea pruning articles have you seen online? Oodles, right? And that's because everyone has questions about how to prune hydrangeas. But I think this is becoming sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we're all making way more of this than we need to be, because hydrangea pruning is not that big of a deal. And I think a lot of people are so worried about doing it, they're afraid to prune their hydrangeas because they're so worried they're going to mess it up. Because if there wasn't a really good chance of messing it up, then why would there be so many videos and so many articles about it, right? I am here to make you relax about it a little bit. So with all things that we feel are a little bit scary in the garden, I always like to say, what is the worst case scenario here? And the worst thing that can happen if you prune your hydrangeas wrong is that you might lose some of this year's flowers. You know what's not going to happen? You're not going to kill them. You're going to get another chance next year. You know what's unlikely to happen is that you're not going to have any flowers at all. Because if you are growing varieties that are semi-new to the market, almost every new variety that's out on the market now is meant to rebloom, which means even if you mess up and you cut off flowers that are going to come early in the year, you're going to get some later in the year. And you're going to say, darn it, I missed the flowers earlier in the summer, and then you're going to remember that, and you're not going to make that mistake next year. So take a deep breath, relax, enjoy this process, and don't worry so much about it, because it's not that big of a deal, I promise. Get yourself some sharp hand pruners, probably a loppers, maybe a little hand saw if you're working with older things, and then we're just going to get in here. As I do almost every year, I'm going to start with my big limelight hydrangea. This is a panicle hydrangea. It gets, you know, sort of pointed blooms at the end, blooms white. Sometimes they turn pink at some stage. You have a really big window to prune these. You can prune these, theoretically, you can prune these, you know, actually once they're fully dormant in late fall or early winter, all the way up until you start seeing green on those buds. Then you probably, you know, when you start seeing that, you got to hurry your butt up on it. If you forget, that's okay too, they'll manage. Now this is a pretty old hydrangea, it's probably 15 years old or so, and I have pruned this hard. In fact, that's how I actually created this really nice base to it, which ended up being almost a little bit of a tree form, which was not really my intention. I just needed it to take up less space in the garden at the base, because like many people, I underestimated how big a limelight gets. It gets big, really, really big. If you want something a little smaller, look for Limelight Prime or any of the other amazing panicle hydrangeas that are out there on the market. So what I'm mostly pruning for is just keeping this guy in check a little bit on the size. These will put on, I don't know, 3 feet of growth a year. No, more than that. In fact, since I went down to 18 inches and it still got up to 6 feet that year, they're just going to grow as big as they want to grow, and that's going to be big. So if you look at the base here, I've basically got a main structure of 3. In the past couple of years, I have started trying to get new growth from the base going, because at some point this shrub is going to need some renewal pruning, and I'm going to have to take out one of these old main stems. So I want some other ones there starting to get going. So you can see where I pruned to last year. You can see last year's cuts. You can also see where some deer came along and got that. We can prune almost anywhere we like on here. It's all about the shape that you're looking for. So you know the general rules with pruning: take out anything dead or diseased, any crossing branches. There are some exceptions to that, like on viburnums, you're just gonna have crossing branches. It's almost impossible not to, that's just how they grow. And then on a hydrangea, I take out any skinny little stems that are left. Usually by the time I'm putting down the size, there's not a lot of skinny stuff left. The only other rule here is that you wanna make sure you cut to something. So don't just cut in the middle of this branch. Cut to where you see this little swelling of leaf buds and cut right above that. Okay, you can see what I've done here. Took it down a fair amount. There's a couple of cuts I didn't do that I want to talk to you about. First of all, I just want to point out there is a clematis growing through this hydrangea, which complicates the pruning just a little bit because I want to prune that separately. It is the type that can get cut all the way back to the ground, but I generally don't care to do that for this specific one. So I do that separately from this after I prune the hydrangea. So here's the cuts that are just like a decision-making process for me. The first one is, do you see this branch coming off here? There wasn't much that grew from it last year. There was a few stems here and then this guy right here. And I'm thinking I might cut that off fully. I don't know that I need that there. We're just debating it because it's a fairly major cut to make, but I don't think there's a lot of cut growth that's going to come from this section of it, and there wasn't a lot of growth that came last year. Then the next two I want to talk about are these two new branches, the ones that I said I'm letting grow so that eventually they can become sort of a main trunk if one of these other ones needs to come out at some time. You can see they put on a lot of strong growth. There's a lot of really good branching from them. They were very healthy last year. They are arching a little bit more than I would like them to, but what we're going to do with these, we're going to keep that height going, but I wanted you to see how I'm going to prune off some of these side branches entirely. Like for instance, these guys are really coming out to the walkway. So I'm actually going to just take those out all together. And actually what I should do then is go all the way down to here. And then these will prune back to those few buds. Same thing here. I'm going to take that guy all the way out. This guy I will let stay. And this guy will get a prune like that. And this guy is great. Same thing with this one. What we're going to try to do is get this to go more upright. So what I want to do is try to encourage like this branch to keep going up. So I'm going to keep that one a little bit longer. We're actually going to cut this here, head that off there. I'll do that for now. Take these guys off entirely because those are spindly. Maybe leave that guy. I think I am going to take out this big branch. It does leave it a little bit empty right there, but trust me, there's so many other plants in this bed that I don't think that will matter too much. So a cut like that might seem a little bit intimidating to make, but these panicle hydrangeas are so vigorous, and particularly one that's well established like this, that will fill in and we will never even notice that that's gone, especially since I grow other plants around this. So don't worry about it. Go for it, cut it off. If you don't like it, fix it next year. Now it just so happens that I'm standing right next to two other types of hydrangeas, so let's talk quickly about pruning those. This guy right here is actually a cross between a serrata, which is a mountain hydrangea, and a macrophylla, which is the big leaf hydrangea. Those are ones, both of those are acid dependent, so you can get pink flowers or blue flowers. That's a really good way to tell what kind you have. This one is not particularly vigorous right now, but I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this, which is almost nothing. All we're going to do is just take out, like you can see here, I hope that you can see that tip is dead. So I'm just going to take it right down to that bud. I'm going to cut out this flower right down to where I see a bud. Same thing here. And that's it. This is, we're not going to, even if this were huge, which it's obviously not, we're not going to size control this. We're not going to do anything. If in doubt with this type, just don't touch it. Here's something that's dead. I'll take that out. Here's something that's dead. Take that out. These are all tiny tough stuffs. These are straight mountain hydrangeas. Normally all I do is sort of pinch the flowers off. Most of the flowers have actually blown away on their own. So I'm not even going to do that. But I am going to talk to you about something I'm going to watch. So these are fairly old. And I've been starting to notice some dead in them. So what I'm going to do is take out the dead stuff that I know is dead. And I'm going to test that by breaking these branches and seeing if they break, seeing if there's any green in them. And I'm just going to cut those out right at the base. That clears up space for new ones to come. This guy right here, I'm not. Now sometimes, you know, these branches might look dead and they're actually not. If it snaps, you know, it's dead. So if you have any question at all whether this is alive or dead, don't touch it. You can always take dead wood out at any time. And that's all you have to do to this serrata or macrophylla type or a cross between the two. Don't prune anything else on these. So here is arborescens hydrangea. This is actually an actual Annabelle, which is sort of the archetype for that type of hydrangea. And this is one, again, where you really can't go wrong on this. You can cut this back all the way to the ground in fall and it'll still be fine. However, it is a little bit nicer to leave a little bit of a framework to help support these big stems. So one thing I want to point out here is that this was originally all one plant. The original plant is right here, but arborescens sort of spreads out, it layers itself. You can certainly make more plants from it, but all of this started from that one plant. There is one in the back that is a pink arborescens variety, but everything else is just an offshoot of that original plant. And so this whole thing now stretches probably a total of, I don't know, 8 or 9 feet probably wide and fills up this whole corner. So these guys couldn't be any easier. I'm just going to cut most of these down to a bud that's maybe 18 inches above the ground, but some of these you'll see I cut a little bit lower than that. If there's something like here, something that is quite obviously dead, that just comes out all the way, and that is all there is to it. Now if you didn't want to do that, if that was, I don't know, for whatever reason, you can cut it all the way back to a bud from the ground. However, I do want to show you what I do with new smooth hydrangeas. Now this is the area on the south side of the driveway where I planted a whole bunch of smooth hydrangeas last year, along with a few other things. And so these are all only in the ground for 1 year. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm looking in here and I see, like, here's a dead stem. Honestly, guys, the dead stems aren't that big of a deal. If you don't feel like dealing with them, you don't have to. But what it does is create a little bit of congestion at the crown of the plant, and it's nice to keep that opened up. Now, I am not going to cut these to 18 inches because I'm going to cut these just down to that first bud, just because these are new baby plants and they're just not going to put on the kind of growth that those other plants have. So I don't feel like we don't need to worry about holding up the blooms with these because it's just not going to be an issue here in the second year. But I will take out, see all these little spindly guys in here? I will take out all of those. There is one variety that we haven't covered in this, and that is oak leaf. Oak leaf, treat that like your macrophyllas, blooms on old wood, so just go in there and nip out the old blooms if you feel the need to do it, but that's it, nothing else. That's why it's really important with oak leaves and macrophyllas to plant those in places where they can just grow to their full size and not have to worry about them so much. Honestly, it's a great plant to have. It's very low maintenance. Okay, so that is all the different hydrangea varieties. See how that wasn't that big of a deal? Don't worry about it. I want people to stop worrying so much about pruning their hydrangeas because you're not going to kill it, I promise. I promise that you will not kill your hydrangea when you try to prune it. And also feel free to make your own experiments with pruning and then take a few, at least mental notes. If you want to prune your Annabelles down to your Annabelles / arborescens hydrangeas down to 6 inches in one spot and at 30 inches in another, give it a shot, see what happens, see which you like better, see which works better in your situation. It's not a cut and dried thing. You get to make the decisions. All right, that's it. I hope I got my point across here. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be good. Have a great day in your garden.